Known for his revolutionary training methods and philosophical approach to bodybuilding, Mike Mentzer is a respected yet somewhat controversial figure in the world of bodybuilding. This respect for Mentzer has been sustained through the resurfacing of workouts and methodologies which have gained renewed popularity. In this video, we will explore his journey from a promising young athlete to a legendary bodybuilder. This is the entire life story of Mike Mentzer. Hi, and welcome to Quicks. I create videos which explore the entire life stories of prominent bodybuilders, YouTubers, and celebrities through engaging documentaries. And in this, we'll explore the incredible journey of Mike Mentzer. This bodybuilder claimed that Arnold didn't deserve to win the 1980 Mr. Olympia, almost fought the Austrian Oak, and had a younger brother many thought was his twin. Let's explore these facts and many more, but first, let's start from the very beginning. Michael John Mentzer was born on November 15, 1951 in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. Almost 2 years later, Mike's younger brother Ray was born, who would later become a successful bodybuilder in his own right. Little is documented regarding their parents, however, it seems they were supportive in any endeavour the boys chased. At the age of 11 and a body weight of 95 pounds or 43 kilograms, Mike began bodybuilding, inspired by muscle magazines and supported by his father, who bought him a set of weights and an instruction booklet.
Well, it's one of those proverbial, often heard stories in bodybuilding. I was at a store with my mother in my hometown of Ephrata, Pennsylvania, and while she was off doing some shopping, I was looking over the magazines, and all of a sudden my attention was arrested by the sight of a muscle man. And I knew instantly, there was no lag time, this is what I was going to be, and it was a love affair, and I've been doing it ever since.
By age 15, he had already somewhat transformed his physique, reaching an impressive 165 pounds or 75 kilograms, setting the precedent for a remarkable career. Of German descent, Mentzer's father encouraged his academic performance in school by offering various incentives, ranging from a baseball glove to cash. Mike later remarked that his father was, quote, unwittingly inculcating in me an appreciation of capitalism. Mike was an exceptional student, consistently earning straight A's throughout his schooling. He also credited his 12th grade teacher Elizabeth Schwab for his love of language, thought, and writing. After graduating from school, Mentzer served 4 years in the United States Air Force, where he began training extensively. Mentzer also began competing in local physique contests at 18 years of age, attending his first contest in 1969. In 1971, he won the Mr. Lancaster contest, but also suffered his worst defeat later that year, placing 10th at the AAU Mr. America. It was Casey Viada that won this competition, demonstrating the caliber of athleticism for success at this level.
Not long after that, I went to the Mr. America, the AAU Mr. America in 1971 and placed 10th in that behind Casey Viator and others. Casey was first that year.
This contest proved significant as he met Viada, who introduced him to his trainer, Arthur Jones. This may have also lit a flame under Mentzer. However, a severe shoulder injury forced Mentzer to stop training from 1971 to 1974 inclusive.
Not too long after that, I injured my right shoulder quite severely while training and was forced to lay off for several years. In late 1974, I started back training. I should say resumed training, and went into competition again in 1975.
Thankfully, he resumed training in early 1975, and he returned to competition at the Mr. America contest, finishing third behind Robbie Robinson and Roger Callard.
At which time I entered the IFBB Mr. America in Los Angeles, where I placed third behind Robbie Robinson and Roger Callard. That motivated me quite a bit, and the next year I trained very, very hard.
He went on to win the Mr. America title the following year in 1976 in both the medium and overall categories. In 1977, Mentzer won the North America Championships in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and placed second to Cal Chikalik at the Mr. Universe in France. In 1978, he won the Mr. Universe in Acapulco, Mexico, with the first and only perfect 300 score. He also won the Florida Pro Invitational and Southern Pro Cup in dominant fashion.
In 1978, I won the IFBB Mr. Universe, or World Championships as they're now called, with the first and only perfect score in history.
Wow.
In 1979, I won my first pro contest, the Southern Pro Cup in Florida.
Mensah had therefore achieved his first aim, setting his sights on achieving his next. This, of course, being the Mr. Olympia title. In late 1979, Mensah clinched the heavyweight class title at the Mr. Olympia with the perfect score of 300 once more, but ultimately lost the overall title to Frank Zane, who secured his third overall title that year.
Then won my weight class at the Mr. Olympia in 1979, placed second to Frank Zane overall.
And you won the over 200 weight class in
I
Mr.
won the
Olympia?
over 200 with a perfect score.
Wow, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. An interesting bit of history.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1980 Mr. Olympia, Mensah finished in a tie for 4th place with Boyer Coe, trailing behind Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chris Dickerson, and Frank Zane. As a result of this placing and troubling symptoms which reared their heads, Mensah retired from competitive bodybuilding following the 1980 Mr. Olympia at the age of just 29.
And of course, in the aftermath, all the magazines carried articles pertaining to the fact that it was fixed, and as a result decided to drop out of competitive bodybuilding.
He consistently shared his disdain and firm belief that the results of the contest were predetermined in Arnold Schwarzenegger's favour, and he would echo this opinion throughout his life. Although Mike never asserted that he deserved to win himself, he felt that Schwarzenegger should not have.
In 1980, I placed 5th at the Mr. Olympia, a contest that I and almost everyone else who witnessed it was convinced was fixed, and as a result decided to drop out of competitive bodybuilding.
And that was Arnold's comeback year.
Right.
Okay. Huh. And you were so frustrated by that you just stepped out of competitive bodybuilding.
Well, frustrated in that I came to see quite clearly that there was corruption involved, that evil was not something you merely read about in newspapers and novels, that it's all around us.
Like I said in the intro, it's also worth mentioning that Mike and Arnold almost came to blows at this year's Mr. Olympia, which is, as far as I know, the first documented altercation at the competition.
There was a lot of arguing going on between Arnold and a few of the guys. It was a very large room. There must have been maybe 50 or 60 people in there, and Arnold, as usual, wanted to be the center of attention. So I said, look, Boyer Coe said that as a gentleman, something to that effect. He doesn't deserve that. You just accused Boyer of acting like a baby, when in fact you're the one who's acting worse than that, and that pissed him off.
Mike, he didn't particularly like Arnold's rhetoric a lot. He let it be known.
So he loses it. He gets up and he goes over to Arnold.
And I thought Mike was going to walk over and pound him. Like, really, I said, I've never, we came so close to physical violence.
Mike moved in like a raging bull.
I scared him. Arnold Schwarzenegger sat down. I continued at him. I wagged my finger at him, telling him that his behavior was reprehensible, and that it was not Boyer, so he needed to grow up.
And he puts a finger in his face, and they start arguing, and everybody that was there said they thought there was going to be a fight.
And it's a real ripple of concern swept through the room.
Two of the greatest bodybuilders of all time are getting ready to fight each other, and people are holding them back, you know? God.
It probably would have come to blows because Mike was pretty bad. The way Arnold was sitting, and if Mike would have hit him, he would have taken Arnold's head. Had Bill Pearl not stepped between Mike and Arnold, all hell would have broke loose.
It became very clear, especially later on as the day proceeded, that things weren't the way they should be.
With the second and most famous being between Kai Green and Phil Heath.
You see the roundness in the muscle from the shoulders
Spread
to
out,
the
gentlemen!
chest.
Hey!
Oh, wow. Here we go.
Spread out! Spread out!
Who wants to break up that fight?
Kai and Dennis switch!
Despite this altercation, he and Schwarzenegger eventually developed a friendly relationship, just like you and I will if you like this video. Go on, it only takes a second. Prior to his retirement in 1980, Mike had no idea that his competitive career was rapidly approaching its end, although perhaps he should have. In 1979, he began using it, stating, "It wasn't about getting that was the last thing on my mind. I took them as ergogenic aids to help manage my demanding lifestyle. They made me feel like a highly productive genius." though the warning signs were evident. Twice during his preparation, Mike woke up feeling on the brink of death. He was so exhausted that he couldn't even lift his arms and had to remain in bed for the rest of the day.
I remember literally not being able to lift my arm without being left breathless.
Yet, by the following morning, he was back to feeling like a productive genius. 2 days before the aforementioned 1980 Mr. Olympia in Sydney, Australia, Mike experienced that same brink of sensation, once again confining him to bed for the entire day. Despite this, by the morning of the contest, he had recovered. He explained that he awoke weighing 225 pounds and, quote, more cut than I'd ever been.
I woke up that morning, everything that I thought would work, did work, and I was in the best condition of my life. There was no subcutaneous fat, or at least it was so little, it was negligible. I did get in the best shape of my life. I went into that 79 Olympia knowing that I was as big as I'd ever been, but considerably harder. I pushed myself to the point where I literally did almost what I thought I was going to do.
Looking back on the 1980 Mr. Olympia, he reflected, I looked my best, but I didn't feel my best. The atmosphere wasn't normal. No one was acting like themselves. There was a strain and tension in the air throughout. Due in part to speaking out scornfully regarding the results of the 1980 Olympia, Mike's relationship with the Wieders fragmented for several years following.
And Ben Weider, who had previously always seemed to pride himself on being in control of things, after all, he never lets us forget he's the president of the IFBB. All of a sudden, he was letting this walk all over him. He sat there quietly. I realized then that Arnold was the IFBB to a very significant degree. I lost a lot of respect for Ben Weider and the rest of the people associated.
Where was the corruption that you saw? I mean, is that in, like I said, the judging? Is that in the promotional side of it? Or is that in the, just the core of the IFBB or
Well, it has to do with the type of mentality that Ben Weider has brought into the IFBB.
Mm-hmm.
I remember many years ago I heard stories, and I came to know as a fact that several of the top IFBB administrators, judges, had criminal backgrounds. I thought that was quite interesting.
Mensa felt that he was blacklisted from the IFBB, which may have been correct, as his annual income had decreased from $200,000 to zero. In 1983, Mensa found a new spark as he began writing for a newly launched magazine called Workout. Mike later explained that writing for Workout was one of the most rewarding and enjoyable experiences of his life, which instilled newfound motivation. However, the company ceased production in 1985, which was one of 3 blows Mike faced in quick succession. The final 2 blows consisted of the loss of his father in the same year and the end of his near-decade relationship with Kathy Gelfo. Perhaps due to these damaging experiences, Mike continued to abuse, which resulted in him damaging both his body and his relationships. After Mike was hospitalized in January of 1990, he had an epiphany in which he realized that if he continued on this same path, his life would soon be over. At this time, he swore off and established his own personal training business based out of Gold's Gym in Venice. It seemed his life had gone full circle, as this was the gym in which he had previously trained for years alongside his Golden Era buddies. He cited 2 people which were paramount to his recovery, which included John Little, the senior writer for Flex magazine, and his estranged partner, Julie McNew, who supported him both emotionally and financially. Despite this recovery, many people questioned whether his problem had been truly quelled. This became apparent as in late 1994, John Little rushed to Peter McGuff's desk and told him that Mike had just called. Mike confidently stated that he was in Las Vegas and about to fly to the moon to meet with Bill Clinton and discuss the world's problems. Unfortunately, however, Mike was not joking. Despite these issues, Mensa's methodologies still hold merit and have been adapted and widely utilized for decades.
Mike Mentzer, a professional bodybuilder known for his insanely high-intensity training. But what made Mike so famous? Well, in the world of bodybuilding, he was a unicorn, training, dieting, and approaching the sport differently than any of his peers. So for the next week, I'm going to be like Mike.
Today I'll be testing the Mike Mentzer Miracle Workout, which is known for doing 1 set per exercise at extreme intensity.
Influenced by Arthur Jones' principles, Mentzer developed his own high-intensity training or HIIT method. He therefore emphasized short, intense workouts, believing that intensity is the most important factor. As previously stated, this approach revolutionized bodybuilding training techniques. In the 1980s, Mike met Dorian Yates and had a significant impact on his bodybuilding career.
I said, look, Dorian, why don't you pride yourself on being radical. Why don't you become the first already super advanced bodybuilder to take a Mr. Olympia physique and take it to the absolute zenith? He started getting really excited. Yeah. You know how these guys are. So, Frank, you're right. I am radical. All right, you're the right kind of guy. I had no doubt when I said that. I knew that would whet his appetite.
Years later, when Yates won the Mr. Olympia competition, he attributed his success to Mike's heavy-duty training principles.
Then the next thing I hear, the guy wins Mr. Olympia, and he's telling all the interviewers that he did take my advice and he cut back to 1 set per exercise, and it really did work. Yeah. So I was delighted.
Interestingly, later in 1994, Mike, his younger brother Ray, and Dorian launched a clothing company called MYM, Mentzer Yates Mentzer, also known as Heavy Duty Inc. The company was inspired by the success of Don Smith's Crazy-wear. Despite their success, Mike and brother Ray's later years were marked by health issues. Since 1999, Mike's younger brother Ray, who was 21 months his junior, had been undergoing kidney dialysis while waiting for a transplant. Mike actually offered to be a donor for Ray, who had won the 1979 Mr. America, but serious heart problems disqualified him from being a candidate. Regardless, Mike moved in with Ray to take better care of him. On Saturday the 9th of June 2001, after a long day of filming for the DVD he was so determined to complete, Mike returned to the brothers' apartment. Despite Ray urging him to get some rest, Mike stayed up late working on the DVD script after Ray had taken himself to bed. When he awoke the next morning and left his bedroom, Ray found Mike had passed, apparently from a heart attack. Devastated by the loss of his brother, Ray began making funeral arrangements for Mike. On the morning of Tuesday, June 12, Joanne Sharkey, Mike's business manager and a close protective figure to the boys, received a call from Ray's dialysis unit, reporting that he had missed his appointment. Tragically, Joanne discovered Ray had also passed away when she arrived at their apartment. Given Ray's fragile health and deteriorating condition, he had been rushed to the emergency room several times in recent months. As such, it's hard not to conclude that the loss of his beloved brother was too much for him to bear. The bodybuilding world was shocked by the passing of the two brothers within just 48 hours of each other. Mike was 49 and Ray was 47. Two legends of the sport, tragically lost but never forgotten.
You know, Mike was my hero when I started. He's a thinker, he's an intelligent guy, and I like to think a lot, think things through as well, so we had that in common. He challenged me to, think about my training more and maybe cut back on the volume a little bit more.